by a mask representing one of nature's deadly assassins, the centipede, the snake, the scorpion, the lizard, and the toad. 5 deadly venoms, 5 masters in the martial arts, each man pitted against the other in savage combat, and each trained in their own vicious method of killing.
What's up, guys? Mr. Dan here. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Martial Arts Monday review. And we're going to change gears a little bit after reviewing a few Lar Lung films and go back to another Chang Cheh film and another Venom mob film. In fact, we're going to review the Venom mob film, the Five Venoms, aka the 5 Deadly Venoms, which is the title that it went by on American TV, where it debuted in the late 70s, a film that really sparked the fascination with the Kung Fu genre for a whole generation. Even the RZA from Wu-Tang Clan says this is the film that made him a Kung Fu fanatic. And of course that would influence his music, the music of many other people, the soundtracks of future films that he would work on, and many other people. This is just one of the sort of top echelon Kung Fu films. Also a real cult film, a strange film, an unusual film. A film that I've enjoyed more with subsequent viewings, I have to admit. When I went back and watched this for the first time many years ago, after not having seen it since it was on Kung Fu Theater in the late 70s, perhaps early 80s, I found it to be kind of puzzling, kind of strange. It wasn't what I remembered. The film starts off with an introduction to the Five Venoms, where you have a dying master who is imparting to his last student, his 6th student, played by Chang Cheh, a character named Yang Di, who's kind of like the D'Artagnan of the story. You know, you had the 3 Musketeers, but you learn about the 3 Musketeers through the 4th character, D'Artagnan. Well, this character's kind of like that. He's a surrogate for the audience as he goes forth and tries to find out who the 5 Venoms are and what their plans are. And it is imparted to him by this dying master that the plans are not all good, that some of them have turned to the dark side, to evil, so to speak, and he wants to rectify that before he dies. So there's actually 6 principal characters in the film, but you do get to an introduction to their style in the beginning, and of course they're all wearing the iconic masks. I'll show you this picture here in the Shawscope Volume 1 set. Okay, there you go. And you know, you've got snake, centipede, toad, scorpion, and lizard. Okay, and they're all wearing masks, and they all have kung fu abilities that correspond with those names. And those are, of course, the names of 5 different poisonous animals. Lizard, in particular, is noteworthy. He can climb walls with just his feet and strike you from above. He's referred to as Gecko in this version of the film, for most of the film. And then you have Toad, played by Lo Mang, who, I say this every time. Every time I see him in a film, I say the same thing. He's never looked more ripped or muscular or in shape. In this film, his ab muscles have ab muscles. I mean, he's... So appropriately, he plays the invulnerable Toad, yet another character that is invulnerable to bladed weapons and whose skin cannot be pierced. So after that introduction, where you see the training facility and the flashback scenes of all these 5 Venoms training, there's actually not a lot of kung fu fighting up until the very end. It is nevertheless a typical Chang Cheh film in that there's a lot of violence. People go out in some pretty gruesome ways in this film, but most of it in the middle is through torture. And I'm shocked that some of this made it on the TV, and that my little 11-year-old or 12-year-old self was watching somebody get their brain pierced with a needle at 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. But there it is. Yeah, there's some kung fu fighting throughout, but it's mostly of the non-lethal variety until the very epic climax, which kind of reminded me a little bit of the end of The Wild Bunch, when you had the famous "Let's go" comment by William Holden's character as the 4 members of the Wild Bunch walk towards their fate. Essentially, you have, in this film, you have 3 members of the cast marching forward throughout the sets, the fantastic indoor sets from Clearwater Bay that Shaw Brothers used for the final confrontation with the evil Venoms. And so, subsequent viewings, you do appreciate the mystery of it, the sort of the almost horror elements of it. I've watched a few Boris Karloff films lately. I've been thinking about some of Roger Corman's Poe films. There's a lot in common here. There's lots of torture devices. I mean, they actually use an Iron Maiden. They call it something else, but they actually put somebody in an Iron Maiden because they have to break down his body. Somebody is suffocated to death. Kind of reminded me of Tourist Trap. And then in the next scene, you can still pile up the torture, one scene after another. You think, oh, I'm going to get a break from that. No, here comes the next one. In the next scene, they kill someone and they describe how they're going to do it before they do it. And that reminded me of the suffocation scene in Tourist Trap. But yeah, this is really an interesting film. But like I said, if you haven't seen it in a while and you only remember sort of the kung fu parts, you may have to watch it a few more times to really appreciate it. And in the book, they make the point that it is almost a strange pick for the #1 Chang Cheh film or the #1 kung fu film or the #1 Shaw Brothers film. It's almost like, speaking of Hammer films, which I'll get to in a moment, imagine if Frankenstein created women or Vampire Circus were overwhelmingly considered to be the best Hammer films, ranked even higher than standard bearers like The Curse of Frankenstein or The Horror of Dracula. Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Like when you get some time, some distance away from the series, you may actually like some of the subsequent films more than the original. And this is kind of the case here. It's a strange film to be considered one of the best kung fu films because, like I said, there are other films that have a lot more kung fu. Nevertheless, we do get to see a lot of really awesome skills on display. Each of the 5 Venoms have their different skill sets. Now,
they practiced a special kind of kung fu, killing by instinct, with machine-like precision, lightning speed, and ruthless power, as ferocious and deadly as the venomous creatures from which it took its name, and whose stings were always fatal. Kill or be killed.
Our sort of hero of the story, Yang Di, who played by Chang Cheh, he knows a little bit of everything, but the dying master says, listen, you can't take these guys on your own because you need to team up with at least 1 or 2 of them to defeat the other ones. So the way it breaks down is you've got 2 guys who are straight up evil. I won't even tell you which ones are going to the plot. You've got 2 guys who are probably good guys on the side of good and want to fix the past injustices. And then you have one of the guys who's kind of a mystery, who kind of shows up wearing his mask. I'll just jump through a window and say something to one of the other Venoms and then jump out. He's the only one that really wears a mask in the middle of the movie. So you don't know whose side he's on until the very end of the film. So it's really a solid mystery. And it also involves a treasure map that one of the dying master's old schoolmates has. And he's worried that the Venoms who have turned to evil are going to seek out this treasure, which they do. And they actually invade the home of a family that they think they have this treasure map, and they pretty much slaughter everyone. So you get to see the after effects of that. And, the other Venoms can look at the wounds, and they know which Venom made those kinds of wounds. It's pretty graphic, grim stuff. But overall, just a fun movie. I'm not going to go into the plot that much. You just kind of have to watch it. It can be a little confusing. If you want to keep all the names straight, you can go to Hong Kong Movie Database. If you're lucky enough to have the Shawscope volume, you can read more about it. And let me just focus on Lo Mang, okay? Because his character is like a really strong character in this film, and I'm not just talking about physically strong. He was actually an accountant, believe it or not, that worked for Shaw Brothers, a muscle-bound accountant who knew Mantis-style kung fu. And I forget how the story goes, but somebody from Shaw Brothers saw him training and was like, why is this guy working in an office? He should be in front of the camera, and the rest was history. So, a lot of these guys like Philip Kwok and Lo Mang would end up in supporting roles in some of the John Woo films that are now coming out through Shout Studios in the United States, at least, in the upcoming months. So that's pretty exciting. Just a fantastic film, a well-made film. Some of the, speaking of Hammer, this is the point I was going to make. A lot of the indoor sets reminded me of some of the Hammer sets. If you could have hypothetically bring some of the Hammer crew over and give them a little field trip, a little tour of some of these inside sets, I'm sure they would have been in seventh heaven. There's some great scenes where, a lot of these sets were probably pretty small if you can go back and look at them. I was actually, when I was in South Korea, we actually went to the one museum where they have recreated old Korean villages, and they actually film a lot of their TV series there, and it's shockingly small, like compact. Like they can only film from this angle or this angle because there's power lines in the back. Well, I imagine the Clearwater Bay Studios were big enough, but some of the sets were actually kind of cramped. So there's some scenes where you have characters walking down these streets, and it looks confined, but then when it's time for the action, the camera pulls back and reveals a much more expansive set. A lot of really good camera work in this film. Chang Cheh knew what he was doing. There's some other really good touches too, because a couple of the Venoms are actually working in law enforcement, and you have an evil sort of magistrate played by Johnny Wang Long Wei again, although he's more of a puppet than the puppet master in this film. He doesn't even know how to torture people. The Venoms have to show him. They have to show him how to make an Iron Maiden. But a lot of the action does take place in the judicial halls because there is a witness to the crime, and they want to make, the evil Venoms want to make this guy change his testimony. So right before they torture someone, they'll show a sign, a placard, and it'll say like fairness and justice. And then they're going to like torture somebody in an Iron Maiden right after that. There's a lot of really good touches like that in the film. Fantastic film. Not the first Venom mob film, interestingly enough. They had already made Chinatown Kid and Brave Archer before this, but obviously this group of 5 actors and oftentimes the supporting players and the director Chang Cheh would of course be known as the Venom mob from this point forward. On my channel, I will make a playlist of Venom mob movies, and eventually I will try to rank them. That's going to be really hard. Now, I didn't have a Martial Arts Monday video last Monday. If you're seeing this today or the week that it comes out, 2 things. I might not have one next Monday. I'm going on a little vacation. And also, it might take me a little while to get back to your comments. But please, leave a comment. Let me know if you've seen this. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And come back again for another Martial Arts Monday review. Thanks.